Welcome back to another episode. This is Layla, and today we are talking about why good girls don't make money. So, having the good girl syndrome creates a lot of different issues for women. Some women actually rebel against the good girl syndrome, but they go to the other side of the spectrum where they become too rebellious. Like they just have too much I would say Lilith energy, but it's in a way that is very destructive, that not only for them but for everything around them as well. So the best way to remove the good girl syndrome is to transmute it. And I'm going to go into details about the symptoms of, being a good girl. Of course, the first main symptom is to be living in poverty or to suffer in any way, shape, or form. The good girl syndrome usually stems from childhood, so it's usually girls that grew up in environments where they had to suppress their emotions. Their caregivers were not able to hold space for them, for their emotions, for their needs. And so they stopped trusting themselves, trusting their body, trusting their soul. And because they just wanted to be good little girls. They wanted to have the approval of their parents or their caregivers, whoever raised them, teachers too. And what this does is that you have a woman that now lives in a cage that is subconscious, so she doesn't know what is actually happening, but she's very restricted. She's very limited in the way she's thinking. Usually women who have good girl syndrome are people pleasers. So they put everybody else's needs above them, above their own. And they become very depleted, very exhausted. And in the long run, that creates a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. And I believe a lot of Karens were the original, I would say, good girl, because at some point, their anger is channeled in the wrong possible ways. They're usually channeled on their children. The anger is sometimes channeled on their husband. That's when a woman starts to nag and control and manipulate. She usually starts being jealous of younger women that are pretty and kind, because it's very triggering to them. So these are all different symptoms. Of course, there are physical symptoms of, being a good girl. It creates, because the anger is suppressed, the shoulders are very tense, the body is very rigid, a lot of pain in the hips as well. Of course, the hormones are unbalanced. It's usually the type of woman who drinks a lot of caffeine because she is not able to have a lot of energy on a daily basis. She doesn't, work with her body, the hormones, the moon. She's a people pleaser, so she wants to fit in the mold of, going to a 9 to 5 to please her boss or her colleagues. And her health is, I would say, the main sacrifice that she does in her life. And of course, she sacrifices her happiness too, her joy, her abundance, her dreams too. So yeah, being a good girl is not fun. It's not cool. And unfortunately, a lot of women who have that are unconscious or unaware of that. And one of the worst, I would say, symptoms of that is that the woman is not going to have money. What happens is that money is an energy, right? We know that. The energy of money is connected to water, and water needs to flow. there's movement in water. Just look in nature, for example. Water cannot stay stagnant. If it does, it becomes green, it becomes full of bacteria. It's just not pure water anymore. It's just not good anymore, right? So water that has a lot of, fishes and, life within it has movement. And of course, water needs containment, because that's the other part. When women get on the other side of the spectrum, where they start to, unleash this anger in a way that's very emotional, that's very irrational, just like a storm. Think about a storm, right? A storm is really unpredictable. It's very destructive, so when a woman gets into that frequency, she's not thinking in the long run, the long term. If she has children, unfortunately, the children are going to suffer from this lack of self-control. But honestly, it all comes down to the nervous system. Usually what happens is that women who have gone through a lot of trauma usually go towards that good girl, syndrome for protection. It's almost like a self-preservation type of coping mechanism, right? And once they realize it, or once they realize that they've been pleasing others and they haven't been nurturing themselves, and they haven't been focusing on themselves, and they've been settling for less in all different areas of their life, that's when the storm comes up, right? The anger wants to come out because it wants to be transmuted. It wants to be alchemized. When it's done in a way that is actually productive instead of destructive, it can actually create a lot of positive things into that woman's life. Now, people don't talk about the nervous system enough, but what happens is that when a woman has gone through so much trauma, she's basically operating from her fragmented, traumatized ego. And a lot of spiritual teachers are like, just visualize, just manifest, blah, blah, blah. If a woman has a lot of trauma, she's going to amplify and manifest more trauma. Her energy is Venusian, so she's going to amplify whatever is already there. So regulating the nervous system is step one. The nervous system has to be in rest and digest. For some people, it's instant, like after a few somatic exercises. For others, it takes a few days. So whatever it is, women have to really focus on regulating their nervous system and being grounded and anchored into the 3D, because once the root are grounded and anchored, then they can rise as the phoenix. Then they can actually use their sexual energy. Instead of giving it away to so many people for free, they can actually turn it inward, and they start to look younger, they start to look healthier, they become healthier too, and they can start to use this energy to create their actual life, but their actual dream life. But like I said, the nervous system has to be grounded and regulated. The root chakra has to be grounded too. If a woman is going through poverty, the worst thing she can do is to do some rituals or manifestation techniques from a place of desperation, from a place of survival. So that's why it's so important to work with the energy of Saturn first, the root chakra, for anything in life. That was actually the original goal of schools, but of course it got distorted, and now schools in general, especially with the traditional system, they just create more slaves. That is the goal of schools. And so, by the way, I've been talking about good girl, like women today, but the same applies to men, by the way. A lot of men are stuck in this like lower consciousness of being a good little boy, and that's why it's been very triggering for a lot of men to hear all these women talk about money and luxury and stuff like that, because first of all, most of them don't know how to get it, and they have this like victim mentality instead of being like, you know what, let me figure it out, let me read books, Let me go on YouTube, let me learn, let me create more abundance in my life so I can be, the protector and provider for my family. Like, it takes a man to do those steps. Boys who are wounded or stuck in victim mentality are going to, call women like gold diggers, and they're not going to understand what's actually happening energetically with all those statements. So, because we've been, I always focus on women anyway, so today is really about the good girl syndrome. So, like I said, alchemizing and transmuting this energy is very powerful, because this is when a woman goes through the two different phases. So she goes from maiden, so the wounded maiden, actually. The image that I get when I hear the word maiden is, like in the 50s, like the housewife. But the one that was abused and exploited, that's usually when a woman has good girl syndrome, she's a people pleaser. So she's going to be very devoted to her family. She might even, if she gets some money at some point for some reason, unfortunately, she's going to be using the money, like I said, to please other people. So it might be to like please her husband. That's why when I hear women being like, I retired my husband, and they're so proud of it, like that is a pick me, that is a people pleaser, because for some reason that woman was programmed that she had to like help her husband or like retire him. And by the way, women who do that end up in intense emotional pain, because there's going to be a point, there's going to be a moment when this woman is going to realize that the more she's been doing for her husband, the more he's been cheating on her, like with younger women who aren't doing shit to him, because he's actually craving this feminine energy of just receiving and impressing. That's why a lot of men cheat with these younger women. And yeah, can you imagine as a woman to like go through this like 20 plus year marriage, to have like 1 or 2 or 3 children, to have all these memories with a man that just does not have an emotional bond with you, and you've been sacrificing everything, your career, you've been paying for like luxurious experiences and vacations for the entire family. Meanwhile, your husband was like texting some transgender women, or like little like not boys, but like 18-year-old or like 21-year-old, younger men. And they just get in shock, right? Like a lot of women don't realize how common these stories are. And there are ways to protect yourself from these situations. So many ways to protect yourself from these situations. But at the same time, celebrity culture, and now I even see a lot of content creators, even in the spiritual community, being so proud. These women are so proud of being these breadwinners. That is super duper masculine. To flex, right? Because of course, if you have a luxurious lifestyle, like you can share some things and some people might perceive it as flexing. But if a woman is intentionally flexing, she's like, this is how much money I've made and blah, blah, blah. And she's doing it, by the way, while showing her face and her real identity, like her name and stuff. So like people can Google her and be like, oh, that's her. She's going to be attracting a lot of abusers, people who want to exploit her, narcissistic men are super attracted to these types of women, because they know they can exploit them so easily, because they are in this people pleaser type of energy. They want to be a good girl. They want to be like, it's like subconsciously they're trying to earn their parents' external validation, but it's like the adult form of it. They're trying to do it with other people, and these stories never end well. And unfortunately, a lot of women shut down. Like after those types of situations, they become bitter. They don't like younger women. They wish suffering on younger women too. So the Karen syndrome is like the later form of the good girl syndrome. So yeah, it's just a really bad situation to be in. But at the same time, awareness is obviously the first step. So to be aware, and then like I said, regulating the nervous system. and raising standards as well is very alchemizing. To move differently is also another way to transform yourself, to just make different decisions. But of course, it has to come from a place of being clear and grounded and knowing what you want, and not like shaming or making yourself feel bad for things you've done in the past. Like, a lot of women get stuck within that like spiritual like love and light of like, oh, I have to forgive people. Like, no, you don't. You really do not. What you don't want to do is carry this like suppressed anger, because obviously that's going to have a repercussion in your life. But no, you don't have to forgive people. That's what religion does, and religion is extremely destructive to the people practicing it. And you're going to see a lot of, actually I've been noticing them a lot recently, a lot of women who have been doing OF, but in a very like low vibrational people pleasing type of way, like selling their coochie for $10. Like, that's very low vibrational. A lot of them are turning into Christianity, and they just shut down their account, or maybe they keep it open, whatever, but they just become these like religious fanatic, like, oh my God, Jesus save me. And it's like, they're still in that good girl people pleaser energy. It's just, they're just using different things. So women can use religion, usually spirituality, which is why it's so important to keep those beliefs to ourselves, to do it in a way that's like an inner journey, like the original, what's the word? Hermetic journey. For some reason I can't find a word, but yeah, it's basically a path of like solitude. Like this is what a spiritual journey is. It's supposed to be a path of solitude, and a lot of people are like, oh, you have to find your soul tribe. No, that's the love and light bullshit again. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to go through the love and light path of deception in order to come back to love and darkness. But whatever, that's just what their soul decided to do. But yeah, when we keep our beliefs, like spiritual beliefs, political beliefs, to ourselves, what actually happens is that people don't have any information to hurt us or to gather. Like, they don't know what to attack, basically. Especially if you're still in the building phase or you're trying to create something, you have to keep it shush, because most men automatically, when they hear a woman that's either super religious or super spiritual, are going to assume that that woman is a former SLUT, all right? Because that's usually what happens. It's these women going through these like people pleasers, like psyops, where it's like, oh, I'm like a religious fanatic, I'm a spiritual fanatic, or I'm gonna sell my coochie for $2 this weekend because I have like this Black Friday sale. Like, it is so freaking intense. But once again, trauma is doing that. So the best way, like I said, to move past it, to rise above it, is by transmuting these energies, all right? Oh my God, that was so many information today. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, and I'll see you tomorrow.